Hi guys, it's Darrell Smith from South Dakota. Today I'm going to tell you a little story about one of the adventures I had, probably the most challenging mentally and physically that I had ever done. Uh, we were at around 11,500 feet on Mount Rainier. The two experienced climbers in our four-team group, four-person group, were standing nose to nose, shouting at each other angrily. We'd climbed, started out before daylight, and had climbed up, and we ran into a sheer wall of ice, maybe 12 feet tall. It was vertical and 15 yards wide. We'd gone over to the right side and tried to peek around there, but the glacial ice was all broken and steep, and it was impossible to even think about going that direction. We had gone the other way, to the left. There were crevasses that looked pretty dangerous. So one of the experienced climbers said, well, we made a good effort, and we'll just have to come back another day to finish the climb, to try to get to the top. The other experienced climber said, bullshit. We've worked our butts off to get to this altitude, and we're not turning back. And they had quite a long argument for a while there. Kurt Bryan, my friend, and I had never been on the mountain before, so we didn't know who was correct. So there you have it. This adventure started 2 days before the climb was to be done. My friend Kurt Bryan, he was a classmate in our initial training class at Northwest Airlines, and we'd kept in touch over the years. And what happened was he was going to climb the mountain with three other guys. Well, one of the other guys had to cancel out, so that left a slot open. So he gave me a call and said, day after tomorrow, we're going to climb Mount Rainier. Would you like to do that? And I said, sure. I borrowed some mountain climbing gear from a lawyer friend that I knew, and he had done a little bit of climbing. I got an ice axe and some crampons. Crampons are some devices you strap to your boots that have long spikes on the bottom so you can walk on ice. Well, I grabbed all this, didn't know what I'd need, so I just packed everything I could find associated with camping out into a bag, and it was heavy, and I was on the next flight to Seattle. The negotiated contract between the pilots and the company allows a certain number of sick days, and you get paid for them just as if you flew. A lot of the guys would take, whenever they, often, once or twice a year, nearly all they could, take days off and get paid for it and claim to be sick. We did not have to have a doctor's note or anything that we were sick. We just said we're sick. So in my career, about once every 10 years, I flew 30 years, once every 10 years I called in sick when I wasn't sick. This is one of those times. I was not sick, but I called in sick to climb that mountain. Well, Sandy and Kurt allowed me to sleep in their spare bedroom, and we had equipment scattered all over the living room of their house, trying to figure out what we would need and what we wouldn't need. And it was quite an interesting an effort. And then the next morning, four climbers and one wife. One of the climbers brought his wife along. So she was the fifth member, but she was only going to the camp, the overnight camp at about 10,000 feet. We all piled into a large station wagon and went to, I believe it was a White River campground or picnic area, parking area, and that's where we started our walking. The trail was was not tough at all. It was a nice, wide trail, walking through big forest trees at the bottom there, and eventually we climbed above those trees. But everything was going good, and we stopped and had lunch, and just after lunch, we came to the Inter, I-N-T-E-R, I believe is the name of the glacier. And at that point, we had a climbing lesson. They taught us how to arrest ourselves, stop ourselves if we happened to fall on the ice and start sliding off the mountain. We were to turn onto our stomachs, dig the point of our ice axes in, and that should bring us to a stop. So we then roped up. Everybody was on a rope, and we started up the glacier. Eventually, Mother Nature had her way with all of us, and once the woman that was with us said, "I got to take a pee," and there was not a place to hide or anything. It was just ice as far as you could see. One of the guys mumbled, "We'll look away," and she said, "Well, you can do as you please, but if you've never seen one of these things before, maybe it's time." She kind of surprised me with that. Anyway, we roped up and climbed the Inner Glacier, and it was hard work, but it wasn't that steep. But we were on ice and finally came to Steamboat Prow, which is a rock formation that kind of looks like the bow of a big ship. And at that point, there was a camp. It had a toilet. It had a little shack, a building of some kind for the park ranger. There was always a park ranger there. He stayed overnight in his little hut. And there was level ground enough maybe to set up 10 tents or so. There wasn't that many when we were there, I don't think. But we got our tent set up and got a fire going with one of the stoves, and had mixed several completely unrelated freeze-dried foods together and made a gourmet delight dinner. Well, since I was the last guy to join the crowd, I didn't have any idea what was going to happen. So as it started to get dark, the man with the wife along just walked up to me and said, "You'll be sleeping with us tonight." And I didn't know how that was going to work out, but I kicked off my boots, I believe, and just left my clothes on and got into the tent and got myself over to one side of the bed. The bed was sleeping bags that were unrolled, and I got as far over as I could. Then the lady came in and she stripped down to her bra and panties and got between us and her husband. I was scared to death. What if I woke up and threw my arms, or in my sleep threw my arms or a leg over this woman? I put my arms right across my chest, laid on my back, and tried to get some sleep, but I don't think I slept very much at all. I didn't want that husband to be beating on me at 10,000 feet up a mountain. And so anyway, it worked out. I didn't touch her, and he didn't beat on me. So anyway, the next morning, early, I can't remember whether we ate or not. I don't think we did. We probably had some power balls or trail mix or something. But it was dark, and we geared up with lighter packs this time. We left a lot of the wife was going to stay in camp, and we left some of our heavier equipment right there. So as we started to climb with headlights, it was still dark. You could look high on the mountain and see 2 or 3 lines of lights working their way up the mountain. They had started climbing well before us. They were well ahead of us. So it was pretty easy going for a while, and then we came to crevasse field. Crevasses are big cracks in the ice that happen as the ice moves around, and we had to go left and right, back and forth to work our way through this field. Sometimes we were walking on the lower edge of a crevasse, and only a few feet to the right would be the top edge of another one. So anyway, it was kind of scary to me. Well, we made it and climbed, and it came daylight, and at times the ice would melt a little bit and snow, and it would make it more difficult for us to climb. It was a beautiful day. I mean, it was clear and it was warm. So short sleeve shirts and hats and sunscreen was in order there. The snow was in a lot of different conditions. Sometimes it would be hard packed, sometimes it would be crusty on top. One place up there, and it seemed like about an acre or 2 acres, there were dishes like saucers, real smooth, and had some way the sun had melted the ice or made it form that way. Well, we kept climbing, and we finally came to this ice wall that I mentioned before. And our 2 experienced climbers yelled at each other for quite a while. Finally, they came to the conclusion that we should attempt to continue up the mountain. So they decided to go to the left, and there were 2 deep crevasses there, and a small bridge or row of ice in between them. And it was, I'd say the ridge or the ice that we walked on was maybe 3 feet wide. So it'd be a 1.5 feet on either side before you the edge of the crevasse. And I never looked in one of those crevasses. I don't know how deep they were. I was afraid to get over there and look at them. Anyway, we were to walk across this thing, single file, roped together, and very carefully. And it wasn't that long, maybe 10 feet or so, or a little longer than that maybe. But we were to do that, and our instructions were, if the guy in front of you fell off of this ice bridge that we were on, the next guy behind him was to jump off the other side. And then when it stabilized with a climber on either side, then they could figure out how to get him back up. The thinking on there was, if somebody didn't counter the weight of somebody falling off, he would have pulled us off one at a time, and we would have all gone into the crevasse. A couple of times we had to cross those crevasses again on ice bridges, and the procedure there was one of the climbers would sit down, drive his ice axe all the way up into the ice and dig in his feet, and then he would wrap the rope around that axe to help hold, and he would the next guy would get beside the bridge and walk slowly over it. The leader of our group made us yell, and it seemed silly because we were standing right beside each other, but made us yell. Once the guy got set on the ground, he would call on belay, when we'd shout it. And the thinking there was that we were at altitude, we were tired, and our brains wasn't working as good as it were at lower altitudes. So he had us yell. So the guy that was sitting on the ground would say, "On belay." And when he got up enough courage, the guy that was walking across the bridge said, "Climbing." And he started walking slowly over the bridge to the other side. And we did that procedure over and got all 4 guys on it. We did that only 2 or 3 times. At about, I'd say 500 feet, half hour or so before we got to the summit, one of the experienced climbers again got was getting altitude sickness. He had a headache and he wasn't thinking very clear, and he was kind of weak. But he did make it to the top. We all flopped down on the ground on the ice, and I would have liked to just lay there and taken a nap. But with him being sick and us having to get all the way down to camp, pack up our extra gear, and get back out to the car that day, we had to leave right away from the summit. It was a beautiful day. We could see Seattle. We could see Mount St. Helens that had the volcano that had erupted. I don't know what it was, 83 or 84. I don't know. I can't remember now. But it was still smoldering, smoking. You could see it easily. So we started down. We put the sick guy in the lead. And that was a mistake because he was kept going the wrong direction and he wasn't making any progress. So we changed and put somebody else in the lead, and we started down as fast as we could, which wasn't very fast. But we did make it to camp. We ran low on water, but in camp we were able to get something to eat, pack up our gear, and resupply our water. We had I mentioned Steamboat Prow. The trail from that camp goes right up the side of the mountain to the top of that, and then down the glacier that I talked about climbing the day before. In some places, it wasn't very steep, and the ice was slippery. So we were taught taught how to what they call it, glading ice. I'll think of it in a minute. But we roped up together. Glissading is what they called it. We roped up together, and we all had ice axes, and we would sit down in single file and slide down that mountain, and with our ice axes held behind us with the point down so that we could bear down on it and slow our rate of descent. And sometimes we'd slide, I don't know, seemed like a half mile or more, but that was way faster than trying to walk that distance. We could have walked it because it wasn't, like I mentioned, it wasn't that steep, but it was much faster glissading. Another little factor about glissading, and another story about the wife. She had some old wool trousers on, like military type trousers, and she was roped up right in front of me, and we slid in one of the long runs and got to the bottom and stopped, and got to a stopping place and stopped. And she stood up, and she had worn the seat of her pants completely out. Her cheeks were quite rosy. She had been bare butts on that ice for a while. I don't know how long. So anyway, we made it out to the car that day and packed up and went home, and made it home that night. It was one of the hardest climbs that I've ever made, or adventures I've ever done, but it was also one of the most rewarding. I still think of it quite often. So that's my story about climbing Mount Rainier. Thank you very much.